Hi guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. So today I have the new Huda Beauty palette to try out with you guys. I'm really excited about this because it's been a really long time since I picked up a palette from Huda Beauty, but this one caught my eye. Here we have the Huda Beauty Pretty Grunge palette, and this palette just came out today, November 1st, which I think is a great time for this palette to come out because the Sephora sale is still happening right now, so you can save a little bit of coin on this palette if you want to. Like I said, it's been a really long time since I got a Huda palette. Nothing really has been speaking to me from the brand, products in general, and I decluttered a lot of my palettes from her, and these are the only two that I have left in my collection. The Naughty palette, which is my favorite Huda Beauty palette, but this one is very grungy. As you can see, this looks very cool toned, and if you're not new to my channel, then you know that cool tone palettes are not my thing. I am not a fan of cool tone palettes, but this one really caught my eye. A lot of you guys were asking if I was gonna get the new Natasha Denona Xenon palette, and I ended up passing on that palette just because I felt like that was too black and white for me, and I know that that's not a palette that I would reach for, like on the regular, and I probably would get it for video and not use it again, and I think that that's pretty wasteful. I just know myself, and I know that I would not touch that palette again, so I'm sorry, but I feel like this is the season of cool tones because, hello, Huda gave us a cool tone palette, and honestly, just looking at this and the variation of shades in here, this is what I was hoping the Natasha Denona palette was gonna give us. It's not a one-note palette. It's not one note at all. There's a lot of different variation in tones, but looking at this palette in person, I do feel like there's a lot more lighter shades than there are deeper shades, and I'm kind of like, did we need all of these light shades in this palette? But we're gonna put it on the eyes and really get a feel for this. Eyelids are primed. I went in with my Too Faced Shadow Insurance Primer. One thing I love about Huda's palettes is that she gives us a lot of different textures. I'm gonna start off with this shade called Fearless. I'm just gonna start by taking this shade in the crease just to give a little bit of dimension. I'm gonna try to use as many shades as possible. I'm just going to build this up. This is basically gonna be like kind of like a transition shade. Definitely feel like this shade blends out really nicely. I'm actually gonna start to kind of wing this out just a bit, just to bring this a little bit outwards. I'm gonna use the same brush and go into this shade called Brave. And I'm gonna use this shade to blend out that shade I just put down. This shade is perfect for softening up the edges. So far, none of the shades are pulling ashy, and that's kind of like what I'm looking for. But these are only the first two shades in the palette. I want to take a little bit of this cream shadow right here, and I want to start to kind of make a wing. So let's see if we can do that. I really love when brands put cream shadows in their palettes because I just feel like you can do so much with a cream black. Just look at how intense this already looks. I'm gonna go in with the black shadow in the palette and smoke it out. And I just love that like smoked out kind of shadowy look that I can get. So yeah, I'm gonna go into the black shadow in here. It's called Renegade. I realized I wasn't saying the shade names, but hopefully you guys could see. But I'm gonna start by stamping this black onto that cream to set it, and then I'm going to start to kind of smudge it with this brush just to create a very smoky shadow. Ooh, that looks so good. It's a lot darker than I want it to go, but that is okay because we're gonna cover this up with some shadows. Trust the process. We are gonna cover half of this up with more shadows. I want to take a little bit of this shade right here. I'm just gonna see what this shade does on top of that shadow wing. I'm just gonna take the same brush that I went in with my transition shade. Just going to messily go over all of this just to smoke it out. I mean, hello, we're going grunge here. This is a grunge palette. So far, I've used 5 shades. Before we go in with any of the shimmers, I want to tap into some of these lighter tones over here. I'm gonna take a little bit of this shade called Love Anarchy, and I'm just going to basically tap this here, all on the lid. before, kind of to like set it and to create a blank base for the shimmers that we're about to put down. If I wanted to, I literally could leave this look just like this, and I think this would be so great with like a really pretty lash. But of course, you guys know I want to play with these shimmers. There's some really cool shimmers in here. Like there's this one that's so chunky, like you do not have to press your hand in there to get any pigment. Like that is so chunky but so pretty. This one right next to it, which kind of feels like her cream formula. Wow, these are pretty. They kind of look a tad bit similar, but still really, really pretty. Strong AF. This one's one of her more, this one's like her marbled shade. Ooh, like almost kind of has like a gunmetal kind of look to it. She also has a darker shimmer in here. I do appreciate this darker shimmer she put in this palette. That one's kind of like purpley. It's almost like a duochrome. It kind of shifts from purple to green. A little bit of silver in there. That's super cool. There are 6 shimmers in this palette. The last shimmer is this one, which, ooh, kind of feels like a cream. Ooh, I love her shimmer formulas. That is really, really pretty. I feel like that's where we start to get like those different textures that she adds in here. Maybe let's take this shade called Maverick. This is where the looks come together. So let's try to like tap this on towards the center. Oh, wow, Huda, that's really pretty. You don't even have to swipe. That is me tapping, but as you can see, there is a lot of fallout with that shade. So definitely do your eyes first and then your base, but that is so pretty. Like you don't not even have to swipe. You can just tap this on and you still get full payoff and pigment. I want to take a little bit of this shade called Haphazard, and this is more of like that duochrome kind of shade, and I'm actually just gonna place this in the outer corner, kind of going over that wing a little bit, like a darker shift when you're facing forward, but then when you turn and it hits the light, you can see that purple reflect in there. That's really pretty. I know she put this shade called Stand Up in the palette, but I just feel like it's such a difference from the silvers, where I kind of wish that there was something a little bit lighter, almost like a toppery kind of shade that can just like go in the inner corner. But I feel like I don't know how the shade Stand Up is gonna look, but let's try it and see. We can always cover it up and put something else. Too drastically different and not really go together with this eye look, but I'm just gonna, let's see. Yeah, I feel like this shade is just a little bit too different, and I'm not really liking how this looks. Yeah, I don't know. It's not like enough for me. I want to try this Rebel shade. It's really chunky, but like so pretty. Ooh, like look at that. Look at that indent that I just did. Like you definitely don't need to put a lot on your finger. I'm just gonna go back into that Maverick shade, and I'm just gonna place this in the inner corner. Kind of looks a little messy. Yeah, definitely looks a little messy, but we're gonna fix this. Let's go back into that cream shadow, and let's just bring this over some. I'm gonna clean this up and do the rest of my makeup, and then we're gonna do a lower lash line together, and then we'll get into my final thoughts. If you're curious about anything that's on my face, it will be listed down below in the description, but let's go ahead and do this lower lash line together. If there's one thing about me, I feel like I do neglect my lower lash line whenever I do makeup looks, but you know, I just like to keep it simple, you know? I like the eyes to do the talking. Can we just talk about how this eye look definitely came together? Like it looks beautiful, and it almost kind of has like that wet look on the eyes. I really like that. I think I'm gonna go into the shade that I went in first. Put this all on the lower lash. Is anyone having an eye watering problem? Every time that I do my makeup now, my eyes water. It messes up my makeup. I'm gonna go into the black shadow and just add a little bit of that. I'm just gonna keep that black shadow towards the outer corner. and I'm gonna blend it up into that wing. I really like how this look came out. At first, I feel like the lashes, the lower lash line, the mascara really brought this look together. At first, I was kind of like, this looks a little bit messy, but as I put everything on and my makeup came together, I really love this eye look. Let's get into my first initial thoughts, first impressions. If you guys see my eye water, it is because my allergies are killing me. Like, I am having an eye watering problem and it's not fun. It is so not fun because it really does ruin my makeup. Let me know if you guys have that problem and how you guys kind of tame it and fix it. I've been taking like, you know, allergy and that's not working. My eyes still get watery. Let me know if you guys have any tips for me. But let's get into my thoughts on this palette. I know that there's been a lot of cool toned, grungy type of palettes that have been coming out from brands. I feel like we're in the cool tone season. I don't know if they all got the memo and said, hey, let's release all the cool tone palettes, you know, around this time. I will say out of all of the brands that have been coming out with cooler tone palettes, I think Huda really knocked it out of the park with giving us a bunch of different tones and different textures. This is a really nice palette. It actually really surprised me. The only thing that I will say is I just wish that Huda took away some of her lighter tones. I feel like she puts a lot of unuseful shades in her palette. Like even comparing this one with my favorite Huda Naughty, I know it's not comparable in, you know, it's not comparable in like the tones and the, you know, the undertones. In this palette, there's a ton of lighter shades that I just feel like look very similar. And I feel the exact same way with this one. I do love that there's a ton of transition shades for so many different skin tones, but a lot of these shades do look very similar. And I just wish that she would have, you know, taken one of these lighter shades, gave us another cream shade, or taken one of the lighter shades and gave us another shimmer that's like a different tone. I just want a little bit more in her palettes. I want her to kind of just like get rid of some of the shades that look so similar, like Love Anarchy and Freedom. Those two look very similar. Like those two, let me swatch a few that just look really similar. These are all of her lighter tones and I just feel like they are way too similar to each other to have 5 shades in this palette that look very similar. You know what I mean? I just want a little bit more when it comes to that. If you're in between the Natasha Denona and this one, I can say with this one, you get a lot of different variation and you can create a lot of different looks with this one as opposed to the Natasha Denona. Plus, this is available during the Sephora sales. Overall, this palette surprised me to say that I am not a cool tone lover. Am I like in my cool tone era? Because this look is giving, and I actually really like how this looks on me. I love having a cream black in here. This just makes me so happy having a black base in here. This palette does get really messy with like the chunky shades, and some of that fallout is getting into the black. Overall, this is a very stunning palette, and as far as the formula goes, mattes are very buildable. The shimmers look really beautiful as well. I thought these two shimmers that I used looked very similar on the eyes, but as I was doing my makeup with my mirror, you can actually see the different undertones between those two shimmers, so they're actually not very similar in person. On camera, it kind of does look really similar. I really like this palette. It's a really nice palette. The Huda formula is like the formula that I know from her. So if you've been eyeing this palette and you wanted to see it on someone with a deeper complexion, I hope this video was helpful. Definitely let me know your thoughts down below. Are you picking up this palette? Are you skipping out on this palette? Let your girl know, and I'll catch you guys in my next one. Bye, guys.